View from a balcony, pulling the blue lawn chairs next to the ice chest. Stuffed 2 grams in the blunt that we just blew. Now I'm getting blown by a bitch who I don't know her name. Cold chain hanging, got a few in the room, but I don't wear them out. Only wear them in the house, cause I shine so bright that I wanna blind you.
The man asked, looking at hers, and then looked at him and nodded. Right, well, appreciately. Those two did nothing to protect or even watch over Naruto for the matter. This, of course, led to several other events taking place. What even looks place Harrison asked. His teeth began to dig into the metal tip of his pipe. While Naruto was changing around by the civilians and people alike, while we were also gone, stores refused to serve Naruto and his house was burned down. They are currently staring const- there as we speak. They apparently no longer have a problem repairing that building now. That, and I quote, the demon freaks isn't living here. We have also located other sources of information from one of Sasuke Uchiha. He said, looking at him, is he willing to speak? Hiruzen asked, looking at him, a little worried. It was a well-known fact that Sasuke and Naruto never really got along, so he could only imagine that if what he had said was the truth, then he wouldn't share that information willingly. Yes, he had said he will answer any questions you have for him. However, he will also be asking his own question, and just like he is doing with you, he expects an honest answer. The male in front of him said. Hiruzen then leaned back and thought about it for a moment. When he was done and looked at the male in front of him, tell Sasuke I agree to the terms. I would also like to speak to him as soon as possible, Hiruzen said, looking at him. The man then left, leaving him and the two other Ambu alone. Now you two refuse to protect Naruto. The elderly man said, looking at them. I made very clear that this was going to be an S-class mission. When I assigned it to you, he said, standing up, tell me, you two, do you know what the potential for breaking an S-class mission is? Hiruzen asked, looking at them. They both lowered their heads. Although because Hiruzen wasn't looking, he continued, I assume that your silence means that you don't know what penalty is death. Hiruzen said, looking at them, I want each other of you to report to Anko and tell her of your betrayal. Hiruzen said, looking at them. They both nodded and began to walk down the stairs. Hiruzen then got out of his Hokage's balls and an imagine of Naruto appeared when he saw that he was fine with a bag on his stomach. He sighed and breathed of relief. However, he saw a fox approaching him. Hiruzen got a little concerned at this because it's a well-known fact that fox are sa- carnivore. Carnivores. Hiruzen then watched the fox smelling Naruto had hands. It wasn't until now that he realized that Naruto's right hand was covered in blood. The fox then pulled away from his hand and got on top of his backpack. Naruto was holding his chest when it was on top of it. The small creature let out tried a yawn and curled up into the ball, then start to sleep. The elderly man then heard a knock on the door and put a ball away. Come in, he said. As he looked at the door, he then saw the man from before. He walked inside with Sasuke, who, for an unknown reason, he bandages around his underments. You want to speak to me, Lord Third? Sasuke said, bowing at the elderly man in front of him. Yes, indeed. So, Sasuke, please take a seat, he said, reassuring to the one of the seat to that we are on the side of the room. Sasuke nodded and walked over to one of the seats and looked at him. So how do you want to do this? The elderly man asked, looking at the young man. How about you ask all the questions you want, then when you're all done I'll ask what I want, Sasuke proposed, looking at the elderly man. Sounds fair enough. Elderly man started as he looked at the raven-haired boy in front of him. Alright, first question. What happened to Naruto? Hiruzen asked, looking at him. He left the village, Sasuke stated very calmly. Why would he do that? Hiruzen asked, looking at the young male, confused, writing on his face. He was tired of the people who treat him around here, Sasuke said, looking at the ground. In all honesty, I don't blame him. If they had treated him like the way they treat him, I would have left a long time ago, Sasuke thought to himself inside of rage. I see. How do you know this? Hiruzen asked, looking at him. I helped him to get out of the village, Sasuke said, looking at him. I see, stated as he then felt quiet of a moment. He, too young to know about the law I passed 6 years ago. I could punish him for having a civilian leaving with possible secrets. Then again, what good would having a battle with the civilians council do me? They probably just find some way to blame it on Naruto, Hiruzen thought as he looked at the boy. How you got the wound? Hiruzen asked, looking at Sasuke. Could I maybe answer this one in private? Sasuke asked, looking at the man. Why, of course, Hiruzen said, snapping his fingers, which signals the Abu to leave the room. After the young man hair looked around the room, make sure it was only them inside the office. He sighed and looked at the elderly man in front of him. I got this wound from Naruto. It was a part of the plan we used to help get him out of the village. He, in hindsight, it worked, but probably wasn't the best plan, Sasuke said, looking at the Hokage. Hiruzen then looked up at the ceiling and sighed. The more he thought about it, the more his head hurts. Alright, final question. The white haired male said, looking at the younger male in front of him. Why did you help Naruto leave the village? And what do you think about him leaving? Hiruzen asked, looking at him. In all honesty, I think it probably for the best. I mean, I never knew how badly they treat him until I caught a glimpse of it firsthand. It was a pretty wasn't a pretty sight. As for why I helped him leave the village, simple answer. No one should be treated this way in this village. Them like trash. They don't treat people like trash. In honesty, I'm surprised he didn't leave sooner, Sasuke said, looking at him. Sasuke, would you be willing to identify the man you saw with Naruto that night? Hiruzen asked, looking at him. Yes, I would all thought Yes, I would, although it was two men, not one, Sasuke said, looking at him. I see. Hiruzen then once again snapped his finger and a Nambu appeared before him. What is it, Lord Hokage? He asked with a bow. I want all ninjas that were out of their home past Sasuke. What time would you say you saw Naruto? The elderly man asked, looking at the young male in front of him. Sasuke then shrugged and looked at him. Around 9, if I had to take a guess, Hiruzen then nodded and looked at the Ombu, and the masked figure nodded. With seconds of receiving his new orders, he bowed and disappeared out of the room. The elderly man then looked at the young male who was still in front of him. Well, I asked away, Hiruzen said, looking at him. Sasuke then nodded and looked at him. I'm going to ask one question, Sasuke said, looking at him. The elderly man nodded, looking at him, waiting for one of oncoming questions. There were so many possible, and Hiruzen was prepared for any of them. Sasuke then took a deep breath and looked at the elderly man. What are you not telling me about Naruto? He asked, looking at him. Hiruzen then smiled at his look and said, there are a lot of things about Naruto that you and this village, for that matter, don't know. Hiruzen said, looking at the young man. The raven haired male was clearly not satisfied with his answer, but he didn't want to be the last Uchiha. He doesn't know how to keep his word. So he sighed and left the building. Hiruzen grabbed his pipe and was about to place it into his mouth. However, he ended up snapping it before he could reach his destinations. The nerves of this village and its ninjas, I mean, the most of it, not the civilians, know about my law and the punishment behind it. In fact, the ninjas are now breaking and Ambu ranks no less. This is just goes to show how far this village really fallen, Hiruzen thought, as he acknowledging to him releasing a massive amount of ki. It was a good thing that no one else was in the room with him. Otherwise they might have possibly fainted. He looked up at the statue of the fourth Hokage and sighed, Minato, I have failed you. Please forgive me. He unconsciously said out loud. As he did, he then sat back down in his chair and sighed. When he did pick up the Hokage balls back up and place it in front of him, he then watched Naruto sleeping from the young child began to stare in his sleep. I hope that Sasuke is right and that this doesn't turn out to be an, a problem of your life, Naruto. I won't be able to watch over you anymore. If I do, then the civilians council will not only accuse me of helping you, but will also most likely track you down, Hiruzen thought as he looked at the small figure sleeping. Goodbye, Naruto, he said as the image of him faded from the bomb with Naruto. Naruto woke up to the most unusual sensation of something wet and kind of rough being rubbed across his face. When he looked up at the sky, he saw that it was still nighttime. When he got up, he let out a yawn and looked for whatever had just woke him up. When he did, he saw the same fox from earlier looking at him. Don't tell me you are what woke me up, Naruto stated and looked at him, a small creature in front of him. When he did, let out a small yip and started to wait.